Thank you, Andrew, for the kind introduction. Thank you for the warm reception. And thank you for having me here at this year's Energy Thought Summit. It's an honor to be here today to talk about how we're transforming the Texas General Land Office to make sure that we're serving the good people of Texas in the 21st century. Last year when I took office, I said that the General Land Office is probably the most important state agency here in Austin that folks, frankly, just don't know a lot about. But thanks to the work that we're accomplishing in these past 15 months, I think more people are finding out about what we do. What they're finding is that this agency matters to the people of Texas, but that the people of Texas matter to the GLO. In the life of every Texas family, this agency has an impact on their lives. For the young, the old, the student, the worker, the admirer of our rich state history, or perhaps the person that's looking towards the future, like many of you. For our children, we lease mineral rights for the Permanent School Fund and the Permanent University Fund. For our military veterans, we provide a series of services dating back to the days of the Texas Republic for our 1.7 million veterans. And for our state, we help maintain and defend all 367 miles of the Texas coast, not to mention protecting, preserving, and defending the very symbol of our state's liberty itself, and that's the Alamo. And so from education to economic development, from historic preservation to oil spill responses, this agency has an impact on the daily lives of many Texans. Last year, we began with a vision of how we could create an even stronger, more transparent, more responsive state government agency. We have a vision that we can be better leaders, both personally and professionally, and by efficiently serving the people of Texas and bringing real-world business principles to the daily practice of the oldest state agency that you'll find here in Austin, Texas. In 1876, and I wanted to provide a little bit of historic context for what we do on a daily basis, the Texas Constitution set aside half of all public lands at the time that exceeded 100 million acres to fund K through 12 through the management of the Permanent School Fund. As Texas Land Commissioner, I have the responsibility, and it's a very serious responsibility, of overseeing, in today's day and age, 13 million acres that really traverse the entire state of Texas. The land includes vast tracts in West Texas and the Trans-Pecos Corridor, the Permian Basin, the Eagle Ford Shale, not to mention all rivers, bays, estuaries, and 367 miles from our coastline out to 10.2 nautical miles in the outer continental shelf. As you can imagine, God has certainly blessed the state of Texas with abundant natural resources, and the school children of Texas have reaped the benefit of prudent management of these mineral rights. In fact, just last year alone, we deposited more than $1 billion to the Permanent School Fund, even during a historic correction in the oil and gas markets. But it's my responsibility as Land Commissioner to make sure that we're enhancing development while protecting our natural resources and protecting our environment so that future generations can continue to recreationally benefit from our abundant natural resources. And it's not a small job. Oil and gas revenues have generated more income than any other source of revenue for the $38 billion Permanent School Fund. Our estimated market capitalization now exceeds even the size of the Harvard University Endowment, one of the largest education-focused trusts that you will find in North America. So managing these leases really is a core function of what we do every day, and one of my first acts of office was to try to wring as much efficiencies out of these leases as possible. We also manage the Permanent University Fund, and not to offend sensibilities, 2/3 of the source of revenue from these minerals go to the University of Texas system, and 1/3 go to the A&M system, to the chagrin of many in Texas Tech, at Texas State, and other university systems in our state. In 1876, the Constitution also set aside 1 million acres for the management of these minerals, and 1 million acres were later added to this portfolio, so in the present day, the Permanent University Fund exceeds 2.2 million acres with better rocks, as we say in the oil and gas business, in the heart of the Permian Basin. And so in 1929, the 41st legislature at the time created the Board for University Lease. This board is responsible for leasing the UT and the A&M system minerals for oil and gas exploration and development. As chairman of the board for the university lands, my mission is to maximize revenues in an environmentally responsible way by applying intensive management, new accounting principles, new automation for royalty collection, and also hiring the best talent possible in the private sector. We were lucky to hire Mark Hauser, a former executive at Enervis, a multi-billion-dollar private equity fund based in Houston. As a recovering oil and gas man myself, I know that we can't rest on our laurels in the current environment. In fact, these are when the best opportunities present themselves, particularly for the investment management side of our house at the PSF. And that's why we spent the last year exploring new ways to keep the PSF robust in this corrected environment. A big part of that was putting our lease sales online for the very first time in Texas state history, bringing the way that we do business into the 21st century. And so this slide walks you through some of the transitions that have taken place. The red component of the slide shows my first, when I was just elected as land commissioner, our first lease sale. Now, for those of you who may know a little bit about our practice, you know that private producers would come physically to Austin, to the Stephen F. Austin, north of the Capitol, and submit physical sealed bids. And this is a practice that had taken place since World War II, and really not much had changed since the 50s. And so in that lease sale, we netted $3 million and averaged about $300 per acre. In a partnership with EnergyNet.com, which is a partnership that has benefited us and now the state of New Mexico and Colorado, it was a tense board meeting, I will say, but it took place this past summer, and in the yellow box you'll see some of the results. We leased out roughly the same amount of acreage, netted close to $21 million in less than 20 minutes. We no longer needed dozens upon dozens of professionals to sit there and literally count the physical sealed bids, and we were able to make this report to the people of Texas virtually in real time. We netted over $1,700 per acre, and it's something that we're proud of. And just our last online lease sale is in the green box, took place this past January. And these were inferior minerals that we put out to bid. A lot of them involved natural gas, as we know, with lower natural gas prices, perhaps less attractive to the private industry, but yet we netted over $2,400 per acre on roughly half the size of the geographic footprint that was involved in that lease sale. And so by doing this, we've challenged ourselves to take on new technology platforms at the agency. And just by bringing our lease sales online for the first time, we attracted hundreds of more private producers, not only in the oil and gas business, but hedge funds, private equity funds, investment firms throughout the world to the state's minerals. And so in this environment, we're always looking at new ways in which we can do business, again, to diversify our revenues away from just a traditional hydrocarbon development on the state's minerals. So we've started leasing submerged lands in littoral areas of the coastal areas of Texas, because as you imagine, there are a lot of offshore rig operators that during this time are looking to unload some of their assets. And so we're leasing some of these lands to these offshore operators to generate temporary revenues. We're also increasing our surface leases for solar and wind farm development because in Texas, as you can imagine, we have good rays and excellent wind, particularly in West Texas and parts of the Texas coast. Construction of new wind turbines have already begun near Rio Grande City on the border, and we've completed a surface lease with a company called Eon in Pecos, Texas, where we have excellent rays in the Trans-Pecos corridor. I believe that our agency is well positioned to take advantage of a historic price saving in terms of wholesale solar development due to the location of our public lands. In fact, our studies show that wholesale solar development has declined nearly 75% in the last 3 years alone. So to that end, we've entered into a solar lease with a developer that I can't name since we're still in negotiation, with a private developer that will one day host a 100 megawatt facility. So we're working also with the Guadalupe River Blanco River Authority on an ongoing desal project. As you may know, in parts of our country, particularly in Texas, we've been stricken by numerous droughts. And so through the management of our state energy marketing program, we're partnering with public entities to save not only on their water costs, but to also provide a lower price point for power as well. Since the legislature authorized us in 1983 to competitively price power and have a right of first refusal with all public entities in the state of Texas. So through this program, we save schools, municipalities, counties, even military bases on their power bills. And for many school districts like Nacogdoches and in East Texas, this happens to be one of their largest line items in their budget and provides consistent contracting over the long term so that they can plan their budgets accordingly. Over the last 14 years, we've seen that competition through the SEMP program has provided public utilities an opportunity to be in the driver's seat. And because we're focused on political subdivisions, our systems are specifically tailored now for over 400 public clients that we serve. So thanks to the hard work of the men and women at the GLO, we've generated over $34 million for the PSF just in the last 3 years. We're also partnering with local elected representatives, community leaders to examine the large-scale industrial needs for desal water in our state. We've been approached by numerous entrepreneurs throughout the world, including Sir Richard Branson, to examine the opportunity in the Coastal Bend area where a logistical and transportation boom is taking place in the Corpus Christi area. And I think that over the long term in our state, leading up to the growth patterns that we see to 2040 and 2050, for us to remain competitive in the manufacturing and the high-tech space, we will need to provide endless sources of water for our large-scale employers. But ultimately, all of our hard work will suffer unless we protect our Texas coast, and this is my priority for the next legislative session. 4 years after the Great Hurricane of 1900, the largest natural disaster in our state's history, in the city of Galveston, over 6,000 people died. But city, state, county leaders came together and reconstructed the city of Galveston and raised the level of its grade by 15 feet. It was a Herculean task taken by the people at the time. Here we are 7 years after Hurricanes Ike and Dolly and 10 years after Katrina, and yet not much has really been done on the Texas coast. The initial work to study the vulnerabilities of our state were commissioned by then Governor Perry 3 years ago, and my predecessor began the process of a step to mitigate potential vulnerabilities for the Texas coast. More than 7.1 million people of the 28 million that reside in our state live in a coastal area. 1/4 of the nation's refining capacity also resides in the Houston Ship Channel, not to mention tens of thousands of jobs in the 4th largest metropolitan area in our country. So protecting these assets alone, our people and our communities, should be a national security priority of the highest order. And so in my opinion, if we don't act now, the potential consequences could be astounding. Storm surge modeling conducted by Rice University has shown that a 20-foot storm surge would have come up the Houston Ship Channel if Hurricane Ike had landed just 1 mile west of where it did. And there are more than 4,000 petrochemical storage tanks that would be impacted if a storm surge exceeded 15 feet. So in my opinion, it's time to take action and move forward on this important issue for our state. The cost of delaying any longer is not acceptable. That's why our agency entered the first of its kind agreement with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to conduct a long-term plan to deal with the issues of the Houston Ship Channel and the Corpus Christi area. Why does this matter? Well, if you look at the states of Louisiana, New York, New Jersey, they invested $8 to $10 million for their Corps of Engineer compliant plan and were able to obtain hundreds of billions in reimbursement. We need a unified plan to ensure that Texans receive fair treatment following tropical storms and hurricanes. So we need to do our share of making our state more safe. That's why, among other reasons, we're also doing what we can right now while we're undertaking the study with the Corps of Engineers. We undertook the largest beach renourishment project in our state's history, behind the Galveston seawall. We've taken the first steps to begin removing coastal structures, abandoned oil wells, abandoned offshore rigs, derelict vessels throughout the state of Texas. In partnership with private industry, our Geographic Information Services team is currently conducting an audit of an estimated 2,000 structures that we think that are in littoral areas of the Texas Gulf Coast. Regretfully, in many of our recreational beach areas, due to erosion, we've seen exposed wellheads appear in areas where Texans like to recreate. And so by cost savings that we've implemented in our budget, we've already begun a $3 million investment and have already applied for Restore Act funding to begin removing many of these wellheads. And so whether it's through our agency or other groups like Parks and Wildlife or TCEQ, the historic Deepwater Horizon spill legal settlement will provide a once-in-a-generation opportunity for the state of Texas to preserve, protect, and restore our coast. We're also working with the Texas Parks and Wildlife to begin the first-of-its-kind vessel turn-in program. Abandoned vessels have been a constant plague in many areas of the Texas coast. For years, you would see many broken vessels, particularly after tropical storms, in the vicinity of our coast. And we've partnered with a variety of entities, free of taxpayer expense, to encourage private owners of vessels to turn in their derelict structures. And making sure that we're responsible for taxpayers is the reason why we began this program. Now, making sure that we're taking care of taxpayer money applies to other parts of our agency as well. And it involves tough decisions. We took an idea from Texas Instruments where they innovated in the 90s, the idea of zero-based budgeting. And this is a form of budgeting that all Texas households have to take on. And that's constructing a budget from beginning to end rather than taking last year's budget and adding CPI or inflation. And that's why I ordered my agency to institute zero-based budgeting in my first year of office. We began building that budget ground up and saving dollars along the way. Much as the soft oil and gas market wrings out inefficiencies, I believe that zero-based budgeting has done the same to make our agency more leaner, more agile, more effective during this correction. And utilizing new technology is a big part of our success in reducing the size of our staff by 10% and our budget by 10%. This isn't about grandstanding. It's about governance and it's about leadership. Unfortunately, as you may know, sometimes that means making tough choices. So for us at the GLO, we had to reorganize. We had to reboot. We consolidated divisions to reduce the amount of reports that our leadership would receive. When I came into office, I had 21 functional areas reporting to me, which was completely dysfunctional. We reevaluated the way that we incentivized our employers so that those that were seeking to get ahead in their lives, both personally and professionally, would be financially rewarded for that. And we moved much of our decision-making authorities away from a top-down driven approach, but really to the folks on the front lines that were responding to oil spills or taking care of our coast. The economy, as you all know, is transforming around us. The 21st century economy is online and it's on our phones. Our phones truly are an extension of us as individuals and represent our characteristics and our idiosyncrasies. We sell on eBay, we buy on Amazon, we hail a ride on Uber, and I felt the government needs to get with the times. We'd be failing Texans if we ignore the opportunities that new technology provides. Government needs to see disruptive technologies as opportunities instead of obstacles. The Uberization that we see all around us is, in my opinion, a once-in-a-generation opportunity if we approach it with the appropriate perspective. So government will either choose to adapt to these times or become more and more out of touch with the people that it serves. And as everyone in this room knows, adaptation has to be a choice. We won't stumble into success. So at the GLO, we're adapting, and I think we're thriving. Technology doesn't replace people. I tell my staff every day, it enhances the good work that each and every one of you do. How can we really be a government in the 21st century if we don't understand how people are living in this century? The question shouldn't be how technology impacts us, but how can we use it to impact the lives of others? It shouldn't be about what's happening. It should be about what can we make happen next. Instead of worrying, we're better off by discovering new ways to utilize and exploit emerging technologies and philosophies to identify and eliminate weaknesses and inefficiencies in a large bureaucracy. I came to the land office with a vision. This year we have a mission. In 2015 we made history. In 2016 we have a mission. So by taking action today, we can help create the Texas of tomorrow. And I believe that we're perfectly suited for the task. You know, I'll close with this. These days, it's easy to be discouraged by the politics of today, what we see in Washington, D.C. at the federal level, to think that we all can't make a difference. But to all of you, I'm here to let you know that you can and that you must. Look at the world around you. Look at the rhetoric from this national election cycle. Our country craves strong leadership. Men and women of clarity and purpose, of generosity and courage, of kindness and quiet strength, ready to wring every drop of potential from others and from the technologies of today. It needs folks who know that politics isn't about posturing, it's about people. People like you, your parents, your children, your communities, your businesses. This country needs men and women ready and willing to take their place as the architects of a better tomorrow. Thank you for your time. I hope you all have a great summit.
Thank you, George. So if I can ask sort of a like pink elephant in the room kind of question, pink being our color for the theme and elephant being just an animal I just chose out of the blue. So, you know, public health, safety, and welfare, it means a lot to you, and I love that you brought your own story into that. But, you know, you could have chose a lot more sort of ostentatious roles, right? You really could have. Like you said at the beginning of your speech, there was not much knowledge about the General Land Office. You just shared probably more in one presentation. Raise your hand if you knew half of that going into this. Oh, one person knew something. All right, good job. So why this? Why now? And what's your opportunity look like for real public service in this role? I mean, why here and why now?
Well, for me, public service is about serving others. I've approached my career with the servant's heart as a recovering high school teacher in the inner city, as a military veteran who served in Afghanistan, and as an oil and gas man myself. This is the perfect convergence of all those key skill sets. And for those of you who may know in public leadership, there's once in a blue moon that public service presents itself. Yeah. And so I didn't want to make it about a title. Yeah. I didn't want to make it about fulfilling someone else's expectations. I wanted to make it about serving the people of Texas, and I think that my skill sets match up best. So I'll be back on a ballot in 2 years, so I'll be asking.
Well, I will say, I love that you brought at the end of it, the people, the places, and the performance of the policies are really what you're focused on. Thank you for your service to our state.
Absolutely.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Everyone.
Thank you all.
George P. Bush.
Appreciate it.